Welcome to Elevating La Cultura podcast, a space where I talk with Latinas who are passionate about what they do and willing to share their wisdom with others to change the narrative, especially for the next generation. Each season is centered around different topics, but all with a Latina perspective. This is season 2, focused on health and wellness. So vámonos, and let's get into it. Hola amigas! I hope that you're having a good start to your week so far. This week's episode is filled with lots of wisdom around health and wellness through the lens of entrepreneurship. I interviewed Anabelle about a month ago, and I'm so thankful she said yes to an interview. She's a powerhouse of an entrepreneur and shares so much wisdom when it comes to building a business with the intention of empowering her staff and equipping them with leadership skills and forming a strong community. These are all critical things when building a business to make sure that the environment you're creating is one of joy and happiness, where your employees feel a sense of belonging, which we are learning is so important when it comes to someone's mental health. A job can be so draining on one's life that it consumes all the other areas as well. She also shares wisdom when it comes to protecting your mental health as a business owner, because if you own a business, you know is hard. But if we don't take care of ourselves, our businesses are not going to thrive. All of her businesses, Maestri Tutoring, Juice5 Bar, and Busy Space, are founded on developing healthy habits as well as supporting others in the community. So I hope you enjoy my chat with Anabelle. Hi, I am so excited to be talking with Anabelle Martinez. She is like a powerhouse in the food industry and also like in the business space. And I'm excited to share her story and all that she is doing, especially for the Latinx community and in our local community and town. So yeah, why don't you introduce yourself?
Of course, of course. Thank you again, Karina, for having me on this podcast. I'm always excited to be guest speaker or just, sharing our wisdom and sharing what we've known with others. Being a resource is very important to me. So, yes, my name is Anabelle Martinez. I am currently 28 years old, and was born and raised in Cicero, Illinois, and then I now live in Chicago. So, I started my first business, my baby Maestri Tutoring, which is an after school bilingual tutoring center. So we're fully bilingual staffed. We teach all subjects. I started that in 2016. And then I started Juice5 Bar, which is a really popular business in Berwyn. That one I started in August of 2019. And as of most recent, I started Busy Space February 2021.
Man, you are just like on a roll. And I see that like all of the things that you're doing are all to like pour back into the community. I feel like you see a need and you're like, okay, I'm going to fill
Yeah.
it. How can I make it happen? Which is amazing. I feel like um I feel like maybe that's just like the Latinx spirit of
Mm-hmm.
always wanting to help and pour back into the community. So why don't you walk us through like the story, how you got to the 3 businesses that you have and like how it all started and how you built it?
Of course, of course. So I'll touch base more on like the needs part with you, what you mentioned, right? I've always been since I was little. I figured out ways of how things work, or like why did someone start it, right? Or like why did they do it better than anyone else did? So I was always intrigued by that, and of course, even since I was younger, I would be in gymnastics, soccer, basketball, volleyball, all the sports, and my mom's like, just pick one, and I'm like, I just want to try all of them. So now that I am an adult, I feel like that's carried on to not only my jobs, right, but now my business ventures. But through growth spurts and figuring out what is the best time, the best way that I can delegate my time, or just making sure that I can do everything and still enjoy it, because if we're doing too much, then you don't even enjoy it and you're just rushing through everything. So that's something that I'm still learning, to how to say kind of no to certain things, or delegate more tasks, and bring on even more awesome staff. So yes, I started Maestri tutoring in 2017 when I realized there was a big need for after school, mainly homework help, right? Not every student needs tutoring where it's just like one-on-one guiding them through the whole process of, let's say, multiplications, right? Or long division. Sometimes students just need a space to be able to get their work done outside of home. And I was like, there's not really a space except for like the park district, which is where I kind of grew up in, for dance academies, or the Boys and Girls Club. And I was like, oh, there has to be like a cool, like kind of membership program where the kids are going to be like, I want to go to tutoring. So I started my SD tutoring, and that quickly grew into our summer camps as well, educational summer camps. And that helps students navigate through all educational purposes, where it goes from art, like learning about Frida Kahlo, and then painting like Frida Kahlo. It's not just learning about different people, it's also like seeing how their creativity came about, or learning about someone who created the, I don't know, like the cup, right? Who created the sippy cup, and learning how they came about to do that. So that's kind of what our camps are for. And that's something that I feel like a lot of us lacked in the educational system, where they just taught us what was by the book, but they didn't teach us like why is this important, right? Or why should we know about financial literacy, even for the little ones, right? They could be first, second graders. And I'm like, how much do you think a birthday cake costs? And they're like, $1. And I was like, wrong. Just like basic things like that, where you think everything is rainbows and free. And it's important to start learning younger that you have to find the resources in order to achieve what you want in life. So that's the tutoring center, and that's where I saw a big need for it. And every day I have to go tutor right now after this interview. So I'm excited. I love it. I love seeing the growth that we see with the kids, especially because we see them every year, right? It's not just like if you're a fifth grade teacher, you only see them that one year and then you don't see them again. It's really great to see the growth throughout the years with the kids, and then also their siblings coming into tutoring. So that'll be for the long run, the tutoring center. And then I started Juice by Bar because I loved juices. Since I was younger, I tell my grandma all the time, like, abuelita, I remember when you used to take me to the mercado, we used to get our yogurt, we used to get our juice. Like, there was like a designated juice bar, right? And mainly when I wanted to go get something healthy, a juice, I would go to like Comales or like Pete's. Like, you would have to go in, and you just get so distracted with everything else that is, if it's not just itself just a juice bar. I want to just go in and out. So I was like, what if I initially I wanted to open a coffee shop. And then I'm like, but I don't even drink that much coffee. I'm like, juicing though, I love juicing. And that's something that we didn't really have, right? So I created Juice by Bar, and then COVID hit, and everyone was trying to be healthy. So we actually flourished throughout COVID, which is very rare to say, right? It also feels hard to say because I know a lot of other businesses really suffered. But thankfully, I was able to kind of turn it around and be like, okay, you know what? We're not going to just shut down. We're going to do delivery. We got to like change things up. And if it doesn't work out, worst case scenario, we stop doing it. So I'm very open to risk as long as it's like low risk things that we can implement. But that definitely brought more awareness to the juice bar, and we're very community oriented. So I want to make sure that we have there's actually a Earth Day event tomorrow at 10 a.m. They're going to start at the juice bar. We're going to give out ginger shots. So things like that, where you want to be involved in the community, especially as a restaurant or a place where families come, right, to gather. I think that's very important. And that's something that I instill in my my team, the juiceristas, that we always want to make sure it's a happy environment for parents, children, families. Same for the tutoring center. I think that as Latinas, we definitely always are like that nurturing side of us, right? Like, we have to make sure that we are a welcoming place. We don't want people to feel like they're not welcome. Yeah, so those are the two main businesses. So we have the tutoring center is more service-based, right? And then the juice bar is product-based. And now we have the tech company Busy Space, which I launched in February of this year, but technically I started it in November of 2020 because I was like, I need to get more foot traffic into the juice bar. How do I do it? And then I saw, some friends were doing vendors or they were starting their businesses, and I'm like, okay, well, I have space. They need space. Let me just do pop-ups. And I was pretty scared at first because I'm like, oh my God, is that going to be a whole nother business that I have to kind of like run and market? But the cool thing is that all the vendors are their own businesses. So it's like, oh, they do all their work that they need to because that's their business. And from there, now I could be considered a connector because I met so many new business owners, and mainly I want to say 90% are Latina founded or just women owned businesses. And I was like, wow, this is so awesome to be able to have this great community of business owners, whether they're starting, whether they're the middle like me, or whether they're higher above like multi-franchise owners. We want to have that community where we feel open to asking questions, and that's kind of where I'm at now, where I'm doing more business advising as well for the state of Illinois. Um, but it all correlates, right? It all correlates to being like business owned and being able to help each other with resources. So it sounds like a lot, but that's kind of like my day to day, how my mind works day to day.
Yeah, no, I feel like as an entrepreneur myself, like I can see the connections
Mhm.
and it's easy for me to see like how you got to that next step in
Mhm.
opening the next business.
Mhm.
Um, but I want to kind of tie it together for people who might not see or who might just see like a service, a product, and a tech company.
Yeah.
Um, and I want to tie it all into the health and wellness space because it might
Mhm.
seem like, oh, well, one's a tutoring business, one is, well, how is the tech company a wellness space
Right.
or considered wellness? Um, but I feel like as Latinas, we're all like, we are just naturally inclined, or at least the people that I meet and
Mhm.
how I grew up, like, we're naturally inclined to, like you said, nurture, to make everyone feel welcome, and to help
Yeah.
if you see a need. And
Yeah.
so starting with the tutoring company, I feel like an after school program is so important, especially like now that that
Mhm.
social media is present and we are actually seeing our the youth and how they can be impacted negatively if there aren't programs in place to help them.
Mhm.
Um, and so it's like providing a space that shows kids that they are can be helped, that they
Right.
are loved, they
Mhm.
are in a safe space, and you're doing it through continuing their education.
Yeah, exactly. You're doing two birds with one stone, right? Exactly. And we also, all of our tutors are mentors, right? And it's not just tutoring. If they have any questions, they could chat with the tutors, or we say, hey, let's do an assignment together. Let's write down how your day went. And then that really helps them kind of like dig through their emotions, right? We always say there's big emotions. We don't say there's negative or positive emotions, they're just bigger emotions. And it's always a learning curve too for the tutors to be able to meet the needs of the students, right? But it's so easy because we're like, wow, that was us when we were younger, and we're like, now we can just guide them. And then the students are like, wow, this is easier than I thought. And I'm like, okay, now you can go teach other students at school. Like, you could be a mentor to others. And that really empowers our youth, and that makes them know that they are needed. They're not just like children, right, that don't have a lot of um that don't give too much to the world. But that's not true, because like you mentioned, now with social media, not only are they getting influenced sooner, right? We want to make sure we get to these children third grade to sixth grade. High school and teen programs are great, but they already have all these other influences, so it's really important to get to the core elementary school programs and students. So yeah, they're influenced not only that way, but they can also use those resources online to become the next Steve Jobs, right? Or to become the next business owner, or start a new application. They could be 15 years old, doing all these things. So just letting them know to use their resources for good instead of for bad.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like it's so important to see or to have the people that are those mentors and those
Mhm.
influences be people that look like them,
Yeah,
that are
exactly.
people of color.
Yeah.
Um, to give them that like aspiration, like, yes, I can do that. I can be this for someone else when I grow up and get older.
Hmm.
Um, so
Exactly.
I
What? seeing teachers outside of the classroom, right? They think education is only in the classroom, but it's not. Education can be learned outside the classroom, after school programs, soccer activities, family gatherings. That's where whole life skills and education can take place as well.
Yes, exactly.
Hmm.
Um, so then moving on to the juice vibe bar, I feel like
Yeah.
that is like people can understand how that it ties into the health and wellness
Yeah.
space. But I agree with you. Like I had not seen a juice bar like this unless it was like in the city and it was, like, really small, more in,
Mhm.
like, an affluent community that I'd have to drive 45 minutes to, and I would also go to, like, the local grocery store to get some orange juice because that was the
Right.
only thing available,
Yeah.
um, but I love that you brought this access to, a community, and I feel like whenever I go in there, like, it's like I see people like me, like, they're excited. I feel like Latinos always want to support other Latinos,
Right.
and, um, it is exciting to see people get excited about juice or the acai bowls, um,
Mhm.
and I love that you've named them also, like, I know you have the Selena bowl,
Yeah.
and that is, like, ties into our culture and gives it that cultural reference that you are then, like, elevating and saying, like, "Hey, this is great, and this is, like we can be, um, excited about things that are, like, Latinx based."
Right, and healthy and nutritional, right, so that
Yeah.
was definitely what I still go to I mean, I went to Mariano's and I got myself a smoothie. It doesn't mean you can't support other, right? The goal is to have, we have so many McDonald's and Burger Kings across, we wanna have, like, healthy fast food restaurants, healthy drive-through juice bars. Like, I never consider others my competition. If anything, I'm like, if we have more juice bars in the neighborhood, then more people are gonna come to Berwyn to be healthier, right? So yeah, that's definitely what I always instill in the juiceristas and the team. And people are like, "Why do you only hire Latina employees?" And I'm like, I don't intentionally do that. I just feel like I hire others that are like me. You know what I mean? Like, and I can't. It doesn't mean, but I'm hiring great people, so I'm not gonna stop doing it. It doesn't mean I'm not going to hire males, or you know what I mean? But right now, we have an amazing team of 8 juiceristas and we're adding 2 more. And it's so cool to see it not only be a great place for our customers to come in, but for our employees to work. So that's something that I've learned that I'm subconsciously or unconsciously doing, is that I'm trying to create the work environments that I wish I had growing up as well. So it's great to see the juiceristas come by on their day offs and be like, I just want to come say hi and hang out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Like, I'm building not only a great team, but a great memory and leaders, right? I want to make sure that I'm giving them the opportunities to also become leaders. And then they can go ahead and do whatever they would like with their own business ventures or their careers, and feel the encouragement and motivation and confidence to be able to take that step. So that's why you see them very happy, because they're happy employees, I hope, and that shows, right, for through the business. So yeah, everything on the menu, before we actually didn't do any food, and before it was actually just me there working almost every day, and then I would run to the tutoring center in Pilsen. So that's why our hours were short. I don't know if you remember, it was like 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then we were able to finally extend our hours, and now we have a lot more customers coming in from after work, and they're like, we've been waiting for you guys to open earlier and later. So that's really exciting to see customers all the time, honestly, all the time, coming from far, because they also don't have juice bars available in their area. And before, I used to think like, oh, I just want a few juice bars, like one in Chicago, maybe one in Austin. Then I had a little epiphany where I was like, oh my God, we need to open them everywhere. And then Latinos can franchise, or anyone that wants to open one, they can, and we'll make it accessible. Like, so that's the next step. So we're working on making it as accessible for everyone, wherever they are. But I'm so happy that Berwyn is kind of our headquarters and when we started, because it's an amazing community, and I've been able to help so many people, and in return also gotten so much help from other mentors.
Yeah, and I think that takes us to the tech company and
Hmm.
how you have partnered with so many other businesses to provide pop-up spaces.
Yeah.
Um, and I feel like that is so important, especially after COVID.
Yeah.
I feel like small businesses, especially if they relied on
Hmm.
in-person sales or pop-ups or even like summer festivals, like they really took a hit in their sales and had to pivot to online or hustle to figure something else out. And I have been to the Juice Vibe bar a few times since you started the pop-ups in the spring, and it is always like popping.
I
Like
know.
it's like a party.
Yeah, it's like a party. Everyone's like, "Oh, shop here, shop there." The owners are great. It's so nice to see face to face, right? Like who's behind the Instagram page. Everything's virtual, and then when you see the pop-ups, you're like, "Oh my God, that's you. You're the owner of this?" And they're like, "Yeah." And then the conversations just start, and then they'll be like, "Oh, I'm going to connect you with this person. I'm going to connect you with that person. Who does your stickers? I'll help you get a cheaper price." So that's like the awesome part that just came gradually, like came organically, right? From the business side. It's more like the connection side where it's like a party kind of where it's like a social network gathering, and then we're also supporting local. So it's a win-win situation. And yeah, busy space. I initially did it because I needed help managing the pop-ups because I'm like, oh my God, people really want more pop-ups. They want to have 3 vendors now at the juice bar, and I just couldn't continue with the messaging back and forth on like Instagram. And a lot of people felt like they had to ask me to become a vendor, and I'm like, oh no, you could become a vendor. Like, just sign up. That's fine. So I'm like, I'm like, other hosts must be struggling with this too, right? Like just the connection, the communication with the vendors and like the planning wise. So I'm like, let me just create it. And then I know Jamie from Women's Workout World was also like, hey, how are you, how are you communicating with vendors? How much do you charge, etc. And I'm like, okay, let me add you onto Busy Space. And then we started adding a few other locations, and now we're up to 8 locations, I believe. A few in Berwyn, Cicero, Pilsen, Portage Park, I think Garfield Ridge too. So it's really cool because there's a lot of spaces doing pop-ups, and it's important to have a platform to be able to see all the hosts. And we're eventually going to be able to have like calendar of events where people can say Kika's Jewelry, oh, she's going to be here this Saturday, there next Saturday. They'll have the whole schedule because now as vendors I know that they always have to be posting, and it would be nice if it was like, oh, here's my schedule for the next month type of thing. You can go support us here. So we are working on a few other things. Busy Space right now, it's just me and a developer, Fernando, who's also Latino. We're working on updating the website because right now I made the website and he's a developer, so he's gonna make our like Airbnb website, which is gonna be super cool. Hopefully we can launch it Cinco de Mayo, and that's gonna help automate things where hosts can accept or deny vendors, where they can add more things on the site where it's easier to connect them.
Yeah, and I think that connection is what has been, well, obviously it's been missing for the past year and a
Yeah,
half.
yeah.
And I feel like the excitement is just kind of pouring back into people's spirit. Like
Hmm.
when they get to meet people in person and they get to hear like, "Oh, I've been following you and I love what you're doing. I love your creations. I love your jewelry." It like fuels them like
Yes,
their
exactly.
mental health. I feel like
Exactly.
we have not realized how our mental health has taken a toll during this
Hmm.
time.
Hmm.
We've been under such stress and anxiety, and I feel like it's that connection part that is so important to our mental well being.
Right. Yeah. The mental well being is super important. I mean, even for people like me and you, I'm sure that look like we have it all together. We're like, sometimes we just need to talk to someone that understands, right? Like the business side. Because we have different types of friend groups, right? We have our regular friend groups that we could just vent to about our personal life. Then we have our business side group, right? Of friends that you're like, cool, I can let it all out and they'll understand me and they won't be like, you're crazy. So yeah, the mental health part is something that is really important, and that's why I love going to the pop-ups and just hanging out with the owners, or seeing just like the new customers come in, right, and be like, oh, let me follow you on Instagram. So it's just like the social interaction that it is very much needed, right? There's virtual pop-ups and stuff, but the in-person is what really drives that connection. And we were lacking it for a while, and now things are so moving so fast that it's like, okay, well, I guess we can handle it since we were off off of the social in person for so long. Just back to back events at this point where I'm like, okay, I can't say no because those are great marketing events too, right? Those pop-ups are not just for business owners to make income, generate income, but they're also marketing events.
I want to go back to the Juice Vibe Bar
Yeah.
and kind of talk through how you created the the menu, because you said
Yeah.
you at first you weren't doing food.
Yeah.
So what were like the main pieces that you
Uh-huh.
started with and then built from
Totally.
there?
Yeah. So when I opened the juice bar, I was like, I want to make sure that everyone understands every single ingredient. I don't want there to be like ingredients that they don't know about. Everything is natural. So when I say apples, orange, lemon, it's literally peeled apples, orange, lemons. So there's nothing that's like a juice, like pre-made apple juice that a lot of places have, or we don't add sugar, we just use agave. So I wanted to make sure that it was as healthy as possible. And that it had similar ingredients too, because I didn't want the juiceries to, which was me at first, right? I'm like, I'm not going to be making a smoothie that has 10 different ingredients when I can make another one that's as nutritional, tastes better or the same, and has 5 ingredients. So all of the items on the menu, I try to have the max of like 5 ingredients on them. I don't know if you've been able to tell, but that was my goal, like 5 ingredients, right? And then we also include superfoods. So our superfoods are we have the pitaya, which is it's dragon fruit, so dry dragon fruit powder, and that is good for hair, skin, and nail growth. And then we have our matcha, which is the green tea, right? That gives you energy and then increases metabolism. Then we have the turmeric, which is good for inflammation and stomach aches. That helps. That's what we have it in our ginger shot. And then lastly, we have our spirulina. Spirulina is really good for people with ADHD or people who need, instead of coffee, it helps them focus. So those are superfoods that we also include in our smoothies and our bowls. And then we started slowly after that, right? I started with just smoothies, juices, bowls, and shots. I was like, that's it. Like, I want it to be super simple. And then I was like, wait, we need to do some detox sets because people wanted to do some detox sets. So that's what I implemented after. And then the the infused water, which is like this one, we're gonna start doing it bottled because then you could refill it. So
Yes.
there's always upgrades, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was like, infused water, I like infused water. And it was all things that I was like, I would like to add that, right? Then so everything is dairy free as well. No milk. It's all almond milk. A lot of people thought it would taste different, but honestly, it tastes the same or better, and it's better for you as well. So we're a full dairy free juice bar. When I started implementing the food, I was like, I want it to be gluten free, right? I'm like, I don't want to feel heavy after eating a bagel. So I looked at like the only 5 gluten free bagel options that there are, and I taste tested them, and I was like, okay, this one's perfect. And then I'm like, okay, let's move on to the vegan cream cheese. I'm like, which vegan cream cheese am I gonna like best? So it was just like taste testing, and then I started bringing in my mom, who is now working with me. She's actually now the manager. Surprisingly, I never thought I would be able to work with my mom just because she was more HR and she never worked in restaurants. COVID hit, and then she was like, "I want to work at the juice bar." So we taste test things together, or she'll be like, "Hey, I found this other alternative." So we started with bagels. So we have gluten-free bagels with vegan cream cheese, and then we started doing like the overnight oats. We have our power bites. We now have the playa salad, which I never thought I was gonna implement like a salad. But I tasted this organic dressing that I'm like, I have to bring this to the juice bar. So I'm like, I have to figure out how I'm going to implement this to the food options. And then our really popular one that we have right now is actually our gluten free and vegan grilled cheese. It's super popular.
Oh.
I know, and it's new to the menu, so people have been liking that. And yeah, so that's our menu right now. That's all the things we have, and we've also included our cafe from Back of the Arts Coffee House and some of our Nescafe items. But hopefully that's it. I try to make it like seasonal where I can pull some things and add some things. But now I understand why restaurants change their menu. At first, I was like, well, I'm never going to change it. It's going to stick to how it is. But it's okay. You know, change is okay as long as it's the customers are going to like it and it's going to be healthy for them.
Yeah, I think I've tasted almost everything except for I haven't tasted any of the food options
Okay.
yet. Because
Okay.
usually I go and I'm just like, I want a smoothie, which
Yeah.
I get the green Money Dreams
You like the
smoothie.
money dreams?
That's my
Okay.
favorite.
Okay.
And my favorite bowl is a Selena bowl.
Okay.
And if you get a water, like my favorite is the one with lemon and strawberry and the chia seeds.
Yeah, that's the chia. That's the infused one. Cool.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And the whole family has their orders and
They already know what they want to
we all
order. See,
yeah,
and that's what I've noticed too. I was very surprised when people were like, everything on the menu is good. I'm like, I know because I made sure it was good, right? But you feel like maybe you have different taste buds than other people. So I'm very happy that everything that I've put out, I made sure obviously that I'm gonna enjoy it and that the ingredients are also great, right? And it's great to see that family and people of all ages can have our items. It's not just adults.
I think it really well, I appreciate that everything is dairy free because usually when I
Mhm.
go to a coffee shop or a restaurant, I have to specifically ask for almond milk or soy milk or say like, what are your alternative milk options?
Yeah.
Because while I can have like cheese and I can have cow milk,
Mhm.
like it's gonna mess me up.
Yeah,
And
yeah, same, same. I don't know. I haven't been diagnosed as lactose intolerant, but I'm like, I don't drink it, so I wouldn't give it to other people, if I don't drink it.
right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like your whole menu is pretty solid.
Mhm.
Um, I love how you said that you started the Juice Fi bar with like remembering going to with your abuelita to the
Yeah,
mercados and getting juice and getting like that was a special memory for you that kind of sparked you wanting to do a juice bar.
yeah.
Um, so I want you to walk us through like why do you think caring about nutrition and health in the way that you do and are presenting the menu options is
Mhm.
important, especially in the Latinx community.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like there's a lot of I don't know where I saw it. I'm pretty sure it came up like on my newsfeed or something where it showed how the US has different restrictions on ingredients versus like the UK. It could be the same exact product, but the UK has so many more restrictions on ingredients than the US. So it's like whose responsibility is it, right? Is it like the US food industry's responsibility to tell us what to eat? It's like, well, we have autonomy over that. So we should be able to also say, you know what, I don't want to eat things that I don't know how to pronounce what's in them or that I don't can't Google it and understand what that ingredient is. So I really try to I wish that I would have learned this sooner in life, right? Where it's like you can eat whatever you want and you can just find it in so many other places now, or you can just start making things on your own. It doesn't always have to be like cooked. You can make sandwiches that are also very healthy and nutritional, or go to your grocery store and just buying like fruit, cut up fruit, things that could be affordable and not so expensive as a lot of people think they are. So that's also why I try to making the juice bar items as accessible as possible. I know that our bowls are pretty big compared to other juice bars in the city that are like $15 for half of our size, but I'm like, that it's not about making the profit, you know what I mean, as much so as it is about making sure that we can find the right ingredients for it and then price it so that yeah, so our pricing is also not like 450. We don't have like 50s or like decimals, and a lot of people are like, "Why do you do that if it's supposed to attract people more, right?" And I'm like, "Well, if you go to a really nice restaurant, they only have like $10, 12, like it's set amounts." And I'm like, I want people to feel like that when they come to the juice bar. Even if though it's affordable, it's still like a premier service location. And I think that's also been what really brings people in. It's like, okay, I have great high expectations and they're gonna meet those expectations.
Yes, I completely agree. It makes
Yeah.
me so happy to see a round number, like when
Mm-hmm.
I check out and I'm just like,
Same.
oh, all right, $10.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Um, so my passion with having a podcast and creating this space is to like celebrate and encourage other Latinas who are doing amazing things and pouring back into their community. But then the
Mhm.
second part of that, I also want to um, inspire and encourage the next generation, whether it's the next generation being like in college now, or the next
Mhm.
generation in high school, or even younger. I feel like a
Mhm.
lot of my audience are people that are like my age, or like
Mhm.
starting to have kids and really wanting to find that community or just be inspired or encouraged in their own lives.
Yeah.
Um, so as a Latina, what were there any ideas, patterns, limiting beliefs that you had to work through to get you to where you're at?
Oh, definitely. And it definitely starts at home just because, I mean, I remember when I wanted to go, I went to Marquette University and in my head, like I'm the type of person where I'm like, I know I'm going to go to that school. I know it's going to happen. Somehow it's going to happen because it's like, it wouldn't be in my head if I didn't want it. Right. And everything is possible. So when I said I wanted to go to school, my dad was like, no, you're not. My dad's like, why? We live in Chicago. We have so many great schools here. And I was used to just, I was in high school, so I was like, okay, like what my parents say, I have to respect, right? But then it got to a point where I was like, no, I really do think that I should go to the school and let me come up with, I want to have an adult conversation. I don't just want to say, I'm going to go because I'm going to go. So I sat my dad down. It was probably one of the most difficult things I've ever done. Sat my dad down with the little Spanish that I knew at that point. And now I'm more fluent in Spanish because I'm like, I had to learn more Spanish. So I sat my dad down and I started chatting with him and I was like, Dad, this is why I want to go to university, this university. I understand. I respect that you want me to go around here and I understand why you don't want to let me leave far, but it's only an hour away. And I'm going to get some great experiences. This is going to help with this. So X and X, you know what I mean? He still wasn't like, yes, go for it. But I think that definitely helped our relationship where he understood me being like, okay, now um, I'm like, Dad, you've taught me all this. This is what you've been teaching me, right? So that I can now become an adult and try to make decisions on my own and learn from these decisions. So again, that was very difficult for me to do, but that was one thing that I definitely remember overcoming was that. More so than the grades or getting into the schools. Even though I wasn't, it's funny that I own a tutoring center because I was never a straight A student. I was just like there's a lot of students that you just know there's different types of students. It's not just based on the grades, which is also why the tutoring centers are important to me. Um, but what other things? Obviously, like funding wise, right? You're like, where do I come up with the money to start a business? And it's like, well, you don't have to start big. Initially, I wanted the tutoring center to be a storefront. I'm like, it has to be a storefront. I want parents to feel comfortable dropping their kids off. And a friend of mine was like, well, you better start somewhere because someone else is going to start this, right? There's always like someone else can start this before you do. So you need to start at the library, start wherever it's free and start generating, seeing if it's testing the market, right? Seeing if that's even a good location for you. So I started tutoring at Lozano Library, and then I moved into a shared office space called Lobby Space, where I rented a small office, and then from there I moved into the tutoring center. So again, you have to start somewhere. I always say low risk and start low. Same thing with the juice bar. I started very low. I mean, that used to be a doctor's office there. That little area where the juice bar is had paperwork, had a little desk there. It was more like a reception area. And I was like, oh, I can make this into a juice bar. I can make it work, right? And then asking for the licensing process in Berwyn, stuff like that, where you're like, those are little things that you overcome, but you know that you'll be able to get through it with the right resources. So like the chambers of commerce are a great resource. Other business owners, always asking for not a handout, right? You're just asking for advice. Like, hey, this is what I have in mind. What do you think? It's not like, hey, what did you do? Tell me everything, because then that's going to feel more like a job to someone. When if you ask them like, hey, can you give me your knowledge, your feedback, then they feel more like, oh, cool, I'm helping, I'm being a resource, and I'm also going to learn from them as well. So that's those are some of the things that I struggled with. And also just going to events, I would get so nervous just going by myself. I wish I would have done more of that in college, right? Just networking, because now I don't say no to a networking event because I'm like, you never know who you can run into, or you never know who you can help, or that connection, and that's where you really get to meet more people like you.
Yeah, I feel like networking might usually it like scares people and say like, "Oh, I don't know if I can network. Like, what do I say? How do I present myself?" Um,
Mm-hmm.
but like you said, you never know who you're going to meet. And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
the more that you like it's only that first or
Yeah.
second one that
Yeah.
is really nerve-wracking. And but afterwards, you're like, "You know what? I met so many people and I'm
Mm-hmm.
actually closer to my goal because I've made this contact or connection," that
Yeah.
you start um looking forward to networking events or you
Yeah,
start
exactly.
yeah, you start looking for them even more.
Yeah, yeah, I
Um
totally agree.
Yeah, and I love how you said that like it's all about asking questions and figuring out what the next step. Like you have to make a step first
Yeah.
before you figure out what you're going to need for step 2 or step 3.
Yeah.
Um and that I feel like is a piece that sometimes is missing. People say like, "Oh, go for it, just do something." But
Mhm.
they forget to say like while you're doing something, like be looking for someone else to connect with to get you to that next step.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's something that's important that a lot of us either forget or we feel like that's not an option. But definitely, I mean, even now, even growing, right now, I had a team meeting for the juice bar, and we were like, okay, the scheduling, I don't like the scheduling. We need to fix it. We need to figure out how to get a better schedule. So I came up with a few, I saw some two programs, and now I'm going to ask a few friends, like, hey, have you tried these? Has these worked for you? And they might say yes, they might say no, and they might be like, this is what we use. But if you're just like, hey, what do you use for scheduling? They'll be like, oh, that caught me out of the blue, right? Like, well, there's this, but that doesn't really make it a networking. That just makes it like a pull situation where you don't want to be stuck in that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it
Okay.
doesn't help guide you on your ideas, right? That's more just
Yeah.
like that's their ideas. Yeah.
Yeah. I really like this idea of open collaboration
Yeah.
and communication as opposed to just trying to take all of the
Mhm.
information.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, because I feel like when you have that open communication, you leave it open for you to also help them if they have
Exactly.
a need in the future.
Yeah, and that's the cool part when you're able to both help each other, right? And then be like, wow, that's awesome. We have this great relationship, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that's the main thing. A lot of times when we launch something or go into business, we think we have to do it alone.
Mhm.
And that's where we can really um, kind of self sabotage our own
Mhm.
mental health because we
Mhm.
get overwhelmed and bombarded with all of these different tasks when
Yeah.
we could be having partnerships and collaborations and making it a lot easier for our
Mhm.
own sanity, but also helping other people along the way.
Yeah, and you're helping the mission. It's still driving the vision, right? You have to really think. I always say I hire smarter people, right, than me on certain things. Like I hire smarter for customer service. There's so many different people that I've either worked with that have worked with me, and that are currently working with me. Where I'm like, wow, I'm always asking them as well. You ask your team for guidance. That's why you hire them. You don't hire them to just be your assistant or to help you with something. You're like, okay, well, this is a collaborative business, right? Whatever. I always tell the juiceristas mainly or the tutors when I'm interviewing them, I'm like, the cool thing is that I'm the owner, and if you have something that you want to change, I could change it in like an hour or a week. Like, you know what I mean? So if you have any feedback, please let me know. I don't want it to be where it's like, oh no, this is how it is and we have to just follow. It's like, oh, if I see that we can change, improve things, we can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to ask, what encouragement or advice do you then have for the next generation?
Yeah, I definitely would encourage them to, if they have something in their mind that they've been wanting to do, right? Let's say open a juice bar, let's say launch a design store where they create t-shirts. It would be to start it off somehow, right? There's so many different avenues where you could start, whether it's virtually selling online. Now with like Printify, you don't even have to have a whole stock of t-shirts. You could just print it as they order. Then there's also like pop-ups where you don't need a storefront. You can go pop up at different markets and test the market. So, if you want to try Pilsen, you could do a pop-up there. Berwyn, do a pop-up there. Um, or if you didn't want to do a startup, maybe a storefront, you could partner up with a friend that also wants to open a business, and you'll be like two businesses in one. Like the opportunities are endless, and you should never feel like your customers are going to question your business venture because there's no blueprint. Like even with the restaurants, with the juice bar, I thought there was going to be like, oh, here's a blueprint for how to open a juice bar. No, there's none. There's none. Even for taquerias, maybe there's a million taquerias. There's no blueprint. You could do it however you'd like. You could use whatever POS system. You could use whatever scheduling. Like there's no blueprint, so you might as well just make it unique, your own, and not follow any other business. Yeah, that's something that I definitely would encourage new business owners to think about. Or career wise too, right? It doesn't just have you don't just have to be a business owner. I always tell students if they do want to have a career, like that's beautiful. Like I know a lot of successful career individuals who are really moving on up in their career field, and again, there's also no blueprint for that. So it's just going with what you feel, and as long as you're doing things the right way and you're proud of what your actions are, then that'll get you really far.
Yes. So how then I feel like I am on the same page as far as like ambition and going after your dreams, starting somewhere.
Hmm.
But what is what do you do to take care of yourself? Or like what do you think or what advice would you give
Hmm.
for someone else to also make that a priority in their own lives?
Yeah, I definitely try to stop. I stopped doing work after 7. I realized that after COVID, COVID kind of let you reset what you wanted to do. So usually like after 7, I try to stop working, but then that helps, more ideas come. And then in the morning, you'll be like, oh, cool, I had this idea. But when I personally start working at night, then you're tired the next day and it just doesn't work for me. Another thing that helps me is like having more important meetings in the morning because you make so many decisions throughout the day that if you have a late meeting, you're like not fully there. So always have your most important tasks, do those in the morning because if not, your energy is just gonna dwindle away. And yeah, just hanging out with friends and being able to just have even if they are business, a lot of times people say don't talk business at the table, but it's like me and my mom love talking about the juice bar, so that's like when we hang out we're like, oh, look at this idea, what about this idea? And I really enjoy doing that with like my mom or like my friends, my roommate, just like hanging out and talking, just like talking about life and just being able to just enjoy as much moments as you possibly can. Like even though it feels like things are tedious and stressful, you're like, this is so cool that I get to do this, right? Like this is cool that I can figure this out, like that I am physically and mentally able to figure it out. It's pretty cool. But that took me a while to kind of take a step back and be like, everything is gonna work out. You don't have to. If you need to reschedule something, no one's gonna hate you as long as you communicate, right? Like honestly, when you messaged me and you did a great job at following up, and I'm like, oh, I thought I responded to Karina, and I'm like, oh my god, I never confirmed for tomorrow. So even at midnight, I emailed you, and I was like, oh, that was a little unprofessional. But I know now that it's like, okay, I need to make sure that everything's on my calendar, right? And everything is like, my calendar is like my life. So getting as organized as possible. We're never going to be 100% organized, but just little improvements really help. Be like, okay, check that off. I updated my calendar. Check that off.
Yeah, and making sure that you're fueling yourself for a long day, like
Yeah.
with juice, with
Hmm.
things that are gonna feed your body as opposed to wear you out.
Totally, totally, exactly. And that's something that I am also, especially when everything moves so quickly, you want to be able to get something fast. And again, that's why I like the juice bar because it's like cool. I can pre-order it, I can go pick it up, and it'll be ready. Um, Water, it's so important, and everyone always says like, oh, I need to drink more water. Same with me, but it's like, okay, how can I drink more water? Oh, let me get a really cool water jug. Things like that have helped. Like, okay, do I like sipping from it? You have to know what you like, right? Do I like sipping or do I like straws? Like, this was a sip and I threw a straw in it because I know that's how I drink more. So you got to think, you got to know the things you don't like, right? You don't have to know everything you do like, but you got to know, what do I not like? I don't like drinking from a big open cup, so I'm not going to drink water that way. Things like that are things that I hope people can learn earlier on than later in life. But of course, we're always changing.
Yeah, I mean, life, we're always learning. We're always
Yeah.
learning, shifting, growing. That is life. Um, but this conversation was so great. I really appreciate your time and sharing your knowledge and advice. I am so proud of you. I know, I learned about the Juice by Bar when it first opened in Berwyn because I'm like
Mhm.
down the street. But then seeing the growth, like I have just been like, yes, launching another one. Um, and so I am like cheering you on. I am at the Juice by Bar
Yeah.
very, very often, every
I
other
see the
weekend.
tags. I'm like, oh my God, I missed her again. But I do
Yeah.
see the tags and I do see the check-ins. So I really appreciate your support and everyone's support in this little dream. And the same, I try to support as much as I can so many other great businesses. And we don't really see the growth when you're in it, right? You're just like, okay, next, next, next. But that feedback, it's important to always give that feedback because we don't get it as much as we should, and I think it's important to always, again, it all ties in with the mental health, right? Where it's like you sometimes you just need that one person being like, oh my God, you're doing great, like keep going, and you're like, oh, okay, that's what I needed to, like, revamp things or come up with new ideas. So I really appreciate that, Karina. It means a lot to me and the team.
Yeah, no problem. So tell people where they can best find you. And I'll include all of this, like your
Okay.
website, social media in the show notes, but you can share.
Cool, awesome. Yeah, so if anybody needs any advice or just to chat about business stuff, you can message me on Instagram at busy.bell, Belle. And that's the best way to kind of having contact with me. And that's like my personal and professional Instagram account. But you can follow the Juice Bar at juicevibebar.com or on Instagram, Juice by Bar. Maestri Tutoring is as maestri, maestri.us. And then we have Busy Space, BIZZISPACE.com.
Perfect. I hope people are inspired and really um, are proud of knowing another Latina succeeding, and not only succeeding but pouring back into the community, and can then continue that circle.
Yeah,
So
continue for years and decades to come. And I'm also excited for the other podcast hosts so
yeah,
that I can so that I can learn as well from them and connect that way.
yeah, for sure. Anyway, thank you so much. This has been amazing, and I appreciate your time and your knowledge and your wisdom.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate everything. And it was great chatting today.
Yeah, and I'll probably see you at the
Yeah.
Juice by Bar. Yeah.
Okay, Karina. It was great chatting. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Okay, you too.
Okay, bye-bye.
Isn't it amazing how Anabelle built each business because she saw a need in the community? She listened to the struggles that people were having, and she's finding ways to fill those needs. I love how her businesses encourage and support mental health, even of the youngest, with her tutoring as she aims to build relationship and give the youth a safe space and a sense of belonging. I love how she built all these businesses and is still always striving to give back, teach others, empower them to make a difference no matter how small in their own lives. Health and wellness truly should be the foundation of how we choose to live our lives. So let's get after this week with intention of fueling our bodies, making sure we drink enough water and making it fun, and looking to empower others around us. Okay, amigos, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this conversation, please rate on Apple Podcast, share, take a screenshot, and post on Instagram at Elevating La Cultura, or send me a DM. You can also comment on this YouTube video if you're watching online. I always like to hear from people and how they resonate with the stories that I share. So go on. Enjoy the rest of your day, afternoon, evening, whenever you're listening, y nos vemos next week. Bye.